Welcome to my channel FemVision. The first time a doctor told me to try womanhood, I laughed because it sounded like a punchline. He said it with the kind of clinical curiosity that makes you want to either believe him or walk out of the room. I chose the former not because I trusted medicine but because I was tired of the same small gray life that fit me like an old shirt, worn at the collar, stretched in the elbows, faded in all the wrong places. My name is Alex. I'm 31, a systems analyst by trade, which means I live in fluorescent light and logic. Numbers are neat. Code follows rules. People don't behave like functions you can debug. That's the dangerous part. During the day I'm the guy who fixes other people's technical messes, patches malware, pretends the panic in someone else's inbox isn't contagious. At night, in a small apartment that smells faintly of coffee and conditioner, I become experiments and contradictions. I collect dresses the way some men collect ties, quietly with a private kind of reverence. It's not always pretty. It's not always brave. Sometimes it's just necessary. Isabella knows a lot of me but not all of me. We've been together 2 years, long enough to fall into rituals, short enough that awkward things still feel new. Her laugh is the soundtrack to the apartment. She works in art restoration and sees beauty in surfaces others miss. She has hands that know the language of delicate things, so I never told her about the boxes under my bed. They felt too raw, too exposable. There's a reason secrets become sacred. They're the only place you can be honest without risking someone else's expectations. That said, Isabella is not oblivious. She knows there are rooms in me she hasn't entered. She's asked questions, soft, curious, sometimes sharp, and I've answered them with half-truths and careful omissions. I told her I liked theater once and she smiled like a woman who wanted to help rehearse. I didn't tell her the show was always in my bedroom, dim light and a cracked mirror for an audience. The doctor, Dr. Menon, was supposed to help with anxiety that spiraled into insomnia. I went because my hands shook in meetings and a coworker's sarcasm kept me awake at night. He asked about my life, my relationships, my childhood. He asked about the boxes under my bed when I described rituals of calm. There was no judgment in his voice, only observation. If you're comfortable, you might explore stepping into feminine presentation as a form of embodiment, he said, searching for clinical words to dress what felt like a dare. Try womanhood. See what it tells you. It sounded reckless. Sounded like permission. It sounded like a course catalog entry I could enroll in without telling anyone. The apartment we share is a narrow 2-bedroom with tall windows and the sort of sunlight that photographs the dust like it matters. Isabella's canvases live on the far wall, layers of paint that make the living room look like a secret. My side of the closet has shirts folded with the precision of someone who still believes order keeps chaos at bay. Under the bed? The boxes. Silk folded like small compromises, stockings coiled like promises. I knew every fold, every thread. I learned to move with the kind of stealth that comes from years of stealing minutes. Slipping into heels while she hummed in the kitchen, practicing a laugh that sounded more real with lipstick on. Why did I do it? Sometimes it was curiosity. The way different clothes change how you move, how the world rearranges itself around you. Sometimes it was solace. The softness of a dress can quiet a mind that logic can't reach. Sometimes it was an ache I couldn't name. A missing piece that shimmered whenever I stood in front of my mirror and tried on a new person. The reasons stacked up like evidence. Childhood afternoons watching old movies with my mother, the thrill of borrowing my sister's costume once for a laugh. A teenage night in front of a friend's mirror where I discovered that certain eyeliner could tilt my entire mood. None of those reasons fit neat categories. None explained the full, complicated tug that kept me returning to silk and mascara like a moth to a dangerous, beautiful flame. Isabella and I were good at routine. Our evenings were filled with mismatched socks and bad Netflix binges and the kind of comfortable silences that meant everything was okay. But comfort is an easy thing to mistake for safety. Secrets are different. They demand loyalty. I had promised myself I would never risk Isabella's trust by telling her the truth without a plan. The truth was a complicated animal. It could be fierce and gentle, freeing and devastating. I wanted to be certain before I let it loose. On the night I decided to act on Dr. Menon's suggestion, Isabella was away on a long week of work, an art restoration commission in the countryside. The apartment felt newly hollowed. I stood in the kitchen with a glass of whiskey and a dress in my hands and realized how small acts become ceremonies when there's no audience but the ceiling. The dress was black, simple, the kind of garment that didn't scream for attention but refused to hide. I remember thinking about the first time I put it on. The soft tug across shoulders, the strange architecture of a waist I'd never had, the way my posture corrected itself as if some inner compass had finally found true north. That night was private and sacred. The mirror reflected a version of me that felt both foreign and right. Makeup on my face was like punctuation, sudden clarity at the end of a sentence. I practiced walking in heels in the living room, listening to the sound the plastic made against the floorboards and wondering if the world would ever hear me correctly. I dialed my voice quieter and softer until I recognized it as something I had always had inside me but never allowed out. There's a vulnerability in becoming someone new in a space that belongs to someone else. Each button I fastened felt like a small theft, taking something I wasn't sure I could keep. But it was euphoric too, like standing on the edge of a cliff and feeling the wind argue with your fear. It was private until it wasn't. A neighbor's laugh sounded through the thin walls. The radiator clicked. The clock kept time. I knew the stakes. Isabella and I had plans. Little ones, practical ones like groceries and rent and the sort of future that assumes certain roles. I loved her. That love complicated everything. There was terror in imagining the disappointment in her face if she learned the whole truth in the wrong way. There was also a quiet, luminous possibility in imagining her seeing me fully, no stagecraft, no hiding. So the introduction ends with me standing in front of the mirror, a stranger and a homecoming all at once. The dress fits. The lipstick is slightly smudged because my hands tremble when revelation becomes real. I reach for a pair of earrings, tiny silver hoops that belonged to Isabella once in a photograph, and hesitate. Outside, the city hums like a heart you can't read. Inside, I'm a person between pages, waiting to see which chapter will come next. And so I promise myself, this is not a one-night curiosity. This will be data. Experiments I will log in the quiet of midnight. This will be a way to see if my mind settles when my body is dressed differently. For now, it's a stolen hour and a dangerous, necessary truth that refuses to be ignored. I wish I could say that the next morning I woke up and laughed off everything I did the night before. That I folded the dress neatly back into its hiding place and returned to my ordinary life like nothing had changed. But lies never sit right in your chest. They rattle around until they bruise you from the inside. So when I opened my eyes to the thin stripe of sunlight on the ceiling, I didn't feel guilt. I felt a pull, quiet, magnetic, terrifying. Like something in me had shifted and I couldn't undo it even if I wanted to. I had work at 9. A meeting at 10. A whole list of tasks that demanded the Alex everyone knew. But the mirror in the bedroom saw a different truth, and the memory of the woman-shaped reflection it held last night didn't fade with daylight. It clung to me like perfume, soft, lingering, undeniable. I sat up slowly, my heart beating with that same anxious excitement I used to get before exams or job interviews. Except this was worse. This wasn't about impressing a boss. This was about a part of me I'd slammed the door on for years suddenly demanding to be seen again. Try womanhood, Dr. Menon had said. Try. Not become. Not commit. Just try. But I already knew that once you try something that feels like oxygen, you don't go back to choking on the old air. I showered, dressed, made coffee, mindlessly, mechanically. But every movement felt wrong because I wasn't fully here. My head was still in last night's version of me. My hands remembered how the fabric felt, how the zipper whispered up my spine. My skin remembered the ghost of makeup brushes gliding across it. By the time I got to the office, I was wrecked. My nerves buzzed, my thoughts skittered, and every screen looked too bright. People talked around me in a fog. "Morning, Alex," someone said. I nodded, barely hearing them. The only thing I could hear was the thrum of last night echoing in my ribs. I lasted until lunch before I cracked. I told my manager I needed to work from home for the rest of the day, some stomach thing, the safe universal excuse, and drove back to the apartment with shaking hands. The moment I closed the door behind me, the silence wrapped around me like a verdict. The dress was still laying across the bed. And I swear it felt like it was looking at me. Not judging. Just waiting. Like it knew this wasn't over. I approached it slowly like it was something alive. My fingertips brushed the fabric and that was all it took. Electricity shot through me, soft, warm, consuming. Something inside me loosened like the world exhaled. I didn't fight it. Not today. By mid-afternoon I was standing in front of the mirror again, wearing the dress with a level of deliberation I didn't have last night. Last night had been impulse and curiosity. Today was intention. The zipper slid up smoother than it should have. The dress hugged me like it had been sewn for me alone. My breath trembled as I stepped into the heels. Last night I'd been clumsy. Today something in my body remembered. I felt taller, more alert, more aware of the way my hips shifted. I reached for makeup. My fingers were steadier now. A dab of foundation. A line of eyeliner. A soft, muted lipstick. Nothing heavy. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to soften the face in the mirror until the edges of Alex blurred and something gentler, something quieter took shape. When I finished, I stood perfectly still. The mirror didn't show a man pretending. It showed a possibility. A version of me that looked like she had been waiting behind the curtains for years, hoping the spotlight would finally turn her way. I swallowed hard. That's when the thrill slammed into me, hot, fast, dizzying. A rush that felt almost criminal. But right behind it came the fear. A cold slide down my spine. Because the truth hit me in the gut. If Isabella walked in right now, she wouldn't see her boyfriend. She wouldn't see the man she slept beside, argued with, dreamed with. He would see this version. This stranger. This secret. And I didn't know which scared me more. Her reaction, or the possibility that I preferred the reflection in front of me. For an hour, I paced the apartment in heels, practicing my walk, feeling the sway of the dress, the way the world shifted around me. I tried different voices. Not impressions but soft tonal shifts, like adjusting the dial of a radio until the signal felt true. It was intoxicating. Dangerous. Addictive. Every minute made it harder to imagine taking the dress off. Harder to imagine going back to normal. Harder to imagine a life where this wasn't part of me. I was so lost in myself that I didn't hear the phone buzz the first time. It buzzed again. And again. When I finally grabbed it, I froze. Isabella. Just finished work early. Might come home tonight instead of tomorrow. Miss you. My stomach dropped. My heart stuttered against my ribs. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight. No time. No warning. No margin for error. My eyes snapped to the mirror. I looked like I belonged on an entirely different planet. The eyeliner. The lipstick. The dress hugging me like a confession. The heels still warm from my skin. Isabella could be on the road already. She could be halfway home. She could walk in any time, and this would be the first thing she saw. Her boyfriend dressed like a woman. Her boyfriend with makeup melting at the corners of his eyes. Her boyfriend looking more truthful like this than he ever had as himself. Panic shot through me. I grabbed tissues. Makeup wipes. The zipper on the dress caught in my shaking hands. My breath hitched, coming too fast. My legs wobbled in the heels. Everything felt suddenly clumsy. Wrong. Loud. My reflection blurred into chaos. Why wasn't coming out easier? Why no? Why today? The doorbell rang. I jumped so hard the lipstick tube clattered to the floor. No. No. She couldn't be here already. She said she might come home. He couldn't. The bell rang again. I backed away from the mirror like it might expose me on its own. Another ring. Another. Each one louder, sharper, a knife digging into my ribs. I tiptoed toward the door in the heels, every click of plastic on wood sounding like a gunshot. My breath was ragged. I pressed my back to the wall, heart hammering. Alex. A voice through the door. But it wasn't Isabella's. It was our neighbor, Mrs. Collins. Elderly. Always nosy. Always appearing at the worst possible time. Alex, I think I got one of your packages, she called. Packages. Of course. Perfect timing. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting the urge to scream. I couldn't open the door. Not like this. Not with my face painted and my body wrapped in a dress that didn't hide anything. I stayed still. Silent. She knocked again. Alex. Are you home? She asked, suspicious. I didn't breathe. Finally, after what felt like a year, her footsteps retreated down the hallway. I didn't move until the silence settled again. Then I collapsed against the wall, shaking so hard the earrings in my hands rattled on the floor. I'd almost been seen. Almost exposed. Almost discovered before I understood myself. The thrill was still there, sharp, bright, intoxicating, but now it was tangled with terror. A deadly pairing. A dangerous cocktail. I pushed myself up, trying to unzip the dress again. That's when the phone buzzed. Another message from Isabella. Traffic is bad. I've got at least 3 hours. Should I bring food? I exhaled so forcefully my lungs ached. 3 hours. That was enough time. Enough to change. Enough to clean up. Enough to hide every fragment of the woman in the mirror. But as I stood there staring at the screen, wiping a smear of lipstick from my mouth, the truth stuck like a bone in my throat. I didn't want to hide her. Not anymore. But I wasn't ready to show her either. So I stood there, half woman, half man, half truth, half lie, realizing this secret was growing too big to contain. And I had no idea how to live with it. For the next 30 minutes, I moved through the apartment like someone possessed, wiping lipstick, removing eyeliner, pulling pins out of my hair. But I couldn't get myself to unzip the dress. My hand kept slipping away from the zipper, hovering, hesitating, refusing to finish the job. It wasn't stubbornness. It was grief. The moment I stripped the makeup, I felt like I was watching color drain out of a painting. Something inside me dimmed. My reflection lost its softness, its glow, the strange serenity it had found in the feminine lines. Without the makeup, without the heightened curve of my lashes or the outline of my lips, my face looked unfinished. Like the wrong version of me. Like a draft, not the final copy. I swallowed the ache forming in my throat and stared hard at the mirror. My cheeks were flushed. My chest still rose and fell too fast. The dress hugged every inch of me and the heels made the room feel too small, too high, too fragile. 3 hours until Isabella came home. 3 hours until my secret needed to vanish. 3 hours wasn't much, but it was enough. If I moved now. Come on, I whispered to myself. Just change. But the zipper held its ground like it understood something I didn't. I finally forced myself to take the dress off. The fabric slid down my body like a sigh, soft, defeated, apologetic. I folded it carefully, too carefully, smoothing the lines, protecting its shape like it was alive. I should have thrown it into the back of the closet. But instead I sat at the edge of the bed, holding it in my lap, tracing the seams with my fingers until my vision blurred. Who was I becoming? No, who was I finally allowing myself to be? The questions wrapped around me tighter than the dress ever had. I stood and crossed the room, returning everything to its hiding places. The heels tucked behind a stack of old shoeboxes, the lipstick inside the bottom drawer beneath unused cables, the eyeliner slipped between folded scarves that Isabella never touched. I was about to shove the makeup wipes into the trash when I stopped. The wipes were streaked with foundation, eyeliner, and that soft shade of lipstick. My face. My secret. My truth. Smeared onto a piece of disposable fabric. I should have thrown them away. But throwing them away felt like throwing away part of myself. So I wrapped them tightly, buried them under layers of tissue and pushed them deep into the trash can. It didn't feel right, but it was necessary. For now. I checked the time. 2 hours and 35 minutes left. Logic told me to shower again, to scrub away the last traces, to change the sheets just in case a stray bit of makeup had rubbed off. But instead I sank into the armchair by the window, pulled my knees up and stared outside as the city busied itself far below. I felt like a ghost. Not because I wasn't seen, but because I wasn't fully alive unless I was wearing the truth I'd just hidden. The silence in the apartment grew thick, oppressive. Every little noise made me jump. The tick of the old kitchen clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the buzz of a car horn outside. Every sound felt like a countdown. Every second felt like a warning. I pulled out my phone, reading Isabella's texts again. Traffic is bad. 3 hours. 3 hours. But there was another text I hadn't responded to yet. A voicemail. I stared at the icon, my thumb hovering over it like it might explode if I pressed it. Isabella never left voicemails unless something mattered. Heart pounding, I played it. Her voice filled the apartment. Warm, gentle, familiar. Hey baby. I didn't want to bother you at work, but I wanted to tell you something before I come home. Nothing bad, don't worry. I just want to talk to you tonight. About us. About something I've been thinking about. She paused. The silence inside her silence screamed. I love you. See you soon. The message ended. I sat completely still as her words crawled under my skin like ice. Something I've been thinking about. Talk tonight. About us. Nothing bad. People only say that when something is very, very bad. My stomach knotted. Had she suspected something? Had she found something before? Had I slipped somehow without knowing? The panic returned, hot, sharp, suffocating. I pressed my hands into my temples. Not today, I whispered. Please, not today. But the universe doesn't negotiate. I forced myself up and stripped the bed. I showered, scrubbing harder than necessary until my skin burned. When I stepped out, steam fogged the mirror, hiding my reflection completely. I didn't wipe it. I wasn't ready to see my face. Not the version without makeup. Not the version that felt like a lie. After dressing in my usual clothes, comfortable, boring, unremarkable, I walked into the living room and froze. The dress. I had forgotten to put it away. It still lay folded on the chair, like a bright whisper in an otherwise silent room. My pulse spiked. Isabella walked in and saw that. I grabbed it and hurried into the closet. I reached up to place it on the highest shelf, but my hand slipped. The dress fell, landing beside the box where the heels were hidden. I knelt to pick it up. And that's when I saw it. A smear of foundation on the floorboard. Barely visible. Faint. But unmistakable. My heart nearly stopped. Had I dropped some makeup earlier? Had the wipes leaked? Had I stepped around too carelessly? I wiped it clean with trembling fingers, but the panic didn't fade. If that had been lipstick, if it had stained, if Isabella had noticed. I sat back on my heels, breath coming in small uneven gasps. This was too risky. Too dangerous. Too close. But the memory of the mirror whispered back. It's also the only time you felt real. I pressed my palms to my face, torn between two truths that refused to coexist. You can't do this, I whispered to myself. But I could feel myself slipping, falling, toward the part of me I'd buried. It wasn't going away. And hiding it wouldn't save me forever. There was a knock at the door. Soft. 3 taps. Not the impatient knock of Mrs. Collins. Not the brisk knock of a delivery guy. This one was hesitant. Almost nervous. I froze. My entire body went cold. It was too early for Isabella. She said 3 hours. It had only been 90 minutes. Maybe she got a ride. Maybe traffic cleared. Maybe. The knock came again. Alex. Her voice. Isabella's voice. I felt the blood drain from my face. I wasn't ready. The closet was still open. The dress was still in my hands. There might be makeup on the sink. The trash might show traces. My hair might still hold the faint lift from brushing it into a feminine shape. I was not supposed to be seen right now. Fight or flight clawed up my spine. I shoved the dress onto a shelf, careless, desperate, and grabbed the closet door, slamming it shut. I stumbled into the living room, catching my reflection in the darkened TV screen. My face looked pale. Too pale. Eyes wide. Lips still faintly stained, though I'd scrubbed them twice. Another knock. Alex. Are you home? The door downstairs was unlocked. Unlocked. Of course it was. I had been so frantic earlier that I hadn't locked it behind me. My breaths came fast, shallow. I had seconds. Maybe less. I wiped my mouth again with the back of my hand, hoping the color faded. I pushed my hair back, trying to make it look messy in a normal way, not I just had it styled for a wig way. I forced my voice steady. 1 second. The words came out too high. Too sharp. My heart stopped. I cleared my throat hard. Coming. Normal. Deeper. Safer. I unlocked the door and opened it. Isabella stood there, framed by the hallway light, hair in a loose braid, her overnight bag slung over her shoulder, her eyes bright with the warmth I'd always loved. But the moment she saw me, something flickered across her face. Not suspicion. Not anger. Something worse. A quiet, searching confusion. Her eyes scanned my face, lingering on my lips, then drifting over my hair, my neck, my collar. She tilted her head slightly. Were you sleeping? She asked softly. I swallowed. Hard. No. Just working from home. Headache. Her eyes narrowed just a little, barely enough to notice unless you knew her. And I knew her. Right, she said slowly. You look different. My heart hammered so hard I thought the sound echoed in the hallway. Different. She could see it. She could feel it. And she wasn't wrong. Something was different. Everything. I stepped aside to let her in, forcing a tight smile. Traffic cleared early? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. She nodded, brushing past me into the apartment. Yeah. I figured I'd surprise you. She turned. Her gaze flicked around the room. Then back to me. And then, down to my hands. My fingers. My nails. Bare. but still faintly smooth from the clear coat I'd forgotten to wash off completely. Her eyes lingered. A beat too long. A breath too heavy. A silence too sharp. I curled my fingers into fists instinctively. Isabella's expression didn't change. But her next words sliced straight through me. Alex, are you sure everything's okay? The air felt too thick to breathe. The walls felt too close. And I knew, that the secret I'd been barely holding together was starting to slip through the cracks. And Isabella could feel it. Even if she didn't know what it was. Not yet. But she was getting close. Too close. And if she kept looking at me like that, I wasn't sure I could keep lying. Or if I wanted to. The second Isabella stepped fully inside the apartment, I felt it. The moment where the private world I'd created collided with the one I had to survive. Her eyes scanned the room with that quiet intensity she always carried. The kind that made you feel naked even if your body was covered. And in some ways I could feel her awareness before she even said anything. The subtle shifts in her posture, the fraction of a tilt in her head, the narrowing of her eyes. Everything about her screamed observation, curiosity, and something sharper. A suspicion I wasn't prepared for. My stomach twisted like it wanted to knot itself into a permanent spiral. Alex, she said again, softer this time, almost testing the waters. Are you sure everything's okay? I forced my shoulders back, smiled a little too tightly, and nodded. Yeah. Totally fine. Just headache. Long day. But my voice cracked. Just a little. Enough. She stepped closer, and that's when I noticed the subtle changes in her expression. How her eyes flicked down toward my hands again, my nails, my knuckles. The small difference in my posture, the way I carried myself today, was enough to alert her finely tuned intuition. She tilted her head, lips pressed together thoughtfully. You look different, she said. Not accusing. Not judgmental. But her tone had weight. And that weight nearly broke me. I smiled nervously, trying to laugh it off. Yeah, maybe I'm just tired, you know? She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she moved further into the apartment, placing her bag down on the couch. I could see the gears turning in her head, her artist's mind cataloging every detail, storing them for later inspection. I swallowed hard, aware of every millimeter of fabric clinging to my body, every trace of makeup still faint on my lips, and the tension in my posture that screamed, I'm hiding something. Her gaze finally met mine directly. Alex, I want to help you if something's going on. But you have to tell me. Her voice was soft, empathetic, and yet it carried that underlying truth that sometimes fear is louder than words. My chest tightened. I wanted to tell her everything. The dresses, the makeup, the hours spent alone in front of the mirror. But the words lodged in my throat. Not yet. Not now. Instead, I laughed nervously, a thin, hollow sound. It's nothing. Really. Just tired. She didn't look convinced. Not for a second. Her eyes softened slightly, but I could tell she was measuring me, weighing my words against what she felt. That was the danger of Isabella. She saw too much, cared too much, and was unflinching in her honesty. I tried to distract her, moving toward the kitchen. Do you want some coffee? Or tea? I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. She followed, and as I reached for the coffee pot, my heart hammered against my ribs. Every movement was amplified in the small apartment. Every sound a potential giveaway. The knock came suddenly. The doorbell. Intrusive. We both froze. Who? I started, but Isabella's gaze cut across the room. Her expression turned curious, cautious. Go see who it is, she said gently, nodding toward the door. I nodded, my legs trembling slightly as I moved toward the entryway. With a deep breath, I opened it. And there, on the threshold, was a delivery guy holding a large rectangular package. Package for Alex Thompson? He asked. Yes, I replied, trying to sound casual. He handed it over and I closed the door quickly. The relief that washed over me was immediate, but fleeting. Because I could still feel her eyes on me, watching, waiting, reading the subtle cues my body gave away. I set the package down, leaning against the counter for a moment. My hands shook slightly as I brushed them against my jeans. The adrenaline of almost being exposed mixed with the thrill of the secret. Then Isabella moved closer, her presence both comforting and terrifying. She placed a hand lightly on my shoulder, her touch grounding yet intensifying the internal storm. Alex, she whispered. I feel like there's something you're not telling me. Her gaze bored into mine, searching, patient yet insistent. I swallowed again, tasting the metallic tang of anxiety. Every muscle in my body tensed, every instinct screaming at me to flee, hide, undo what I had become. And then I saw it. The package. The return address wasn't just random. It was familiar. The logo, the label, the handwriting. It all screamed me. My secret had come in tangible form. A physical representation of the world I had created behind closed doors. I reached for it, hands trembling. As I tore open the brown paper, my heart pounded in rhythm with every rip. Inside, perfectly folded, pristine, unmistakable. A black satin dress, a pair of heels, a set of delicate jewelry. Everything meticulously chosen, everything screaming your reflection, your truth, your secret. I froze, holding the dress in my hands, eyes wide. Isabella tilted her head slightly, curiosity evident. Alex, where did this come from? My voice caught in my throat. It's just something I ordered, I said, attempting nonchalance. But I knew I was failing. Every syllable of hesitation betrayed me. Her eyes softened, but I could see the calculation beneath the surface. Something you ordered to wear? She asked gently. My breath hitched. I couldn't lie convincingly now. Not entirely. The secret was pressing, clawing for acknowledgement, too loud to ignore. I shook my head slightly. It's not for anyone else. It's for me. Her expression changed then, a mixture of surprise, confusion, and something else. Compassion, curiosity, concern. I couldn't read it fully, and that ambiguity terrified me more than any outright accusation ever could. I swallowed, gripping the dress like a lifeline. I like wearing it. Sometimes. Makes me feel different. Isabella's eyes softened further. She stepped closer, placing both hands on my shoulders now, grounding me, anchoring me to reality. Different? Like how? She asked, voice steady but gentle. I hesitated, words trapped behind a wall of fear and exhilaration. Like me. But more to myself. And maybe a little afraid. A little guilty. But I can't explain it. She didn't pull back. She didn't recoil. She just studied me, silently weighing my words, her hands firm yet reassuring. Alex, she said finally, voice calm but insistent, thank you for telling me. I don't fully understand yet, but I want to. I want to see it with you. If this is part of who you are, then we face it together. The tension in my chest loosened slightly, replaced with something else. Something deeper than relief. Validation. Acceptance. And yet, the danger wasn't gone. Because even as she stepped closer, even as her warmth surrounded me, I knew the secret wasn't contained anymore. It had spilled into the world. The package, the makeup, the evidence of who I truly was. And with exposure came vulnerability. I could feel the pull of transformation again. Not just the dress, not just the heels, not just the makeup. It was the entire persona I had cultivated in stolen hours and quiet nights. And now, with Isabella standing inches away, her gaze soft but probing, I realized that the thrill and fear of being discovered were no longer abstract. They were tangible, pressing against my skin, demanding acknowledgement. I lifted the dress from the package. The satin shimmered under the apartment light, black and perfect. My fingers trembled as I traced its lines, every seam, every fold. I want to put it on, I whispered, more to myself than to her. Isabella didn't hesitate. Instead, she smiled faintly, stepping aside. Then do it, she said softly. I'll be here. I took a deep breath, heart hammering, and slipped into the dress. The fabric molded to my body, familiar and alien all at once. The heels clicked against the floor as I adjusted, hands trembling. Makeup followed, carefully applied, every stroke deliberate, every line a declaration. When I finally faced the mirror, the reflection was breathtaking. Not because it was beautiful in the conventional sense, but because it was true. The person staring back at me wasn't Alex pretending. She was Alex becoming. And Isabella. She watched quietly, her expression unreadable for a moment, then softened into a smile that carried warmth, understanding, and acceptance. But the moment was shattered by a sudden, sharp sound. The doorbell. My stomach dropped. I froze. Isabella's eyes flicked toward the door. Who now? I swallowed hard. I don't know. We both moved toward the entrance, cautious. I peeked through the peephole. It was him. The man I never wanted to see. My coworker. My supervisor. The one person who, if he saw me like this, would ruin everything. And he had a grin. One of those smiles that promised judgment, exposure and chaos. The doorbell rang again. And in that instant I realized. My secret was no longer mine alone. It was about to explode. The doorbell rang again, relentless, insistent, almost mocking. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs like a drum. Every instinct screamed at me to hide, to vanish, to undo everything, but it was too late. The dress, the heels, the carefully applied makeup, they were all part of me now. Part of my truth. And it wasn't just a secret anymore. It was exposure waiting to happen. Isabella stepped closer, her hand brushing mine for a fleeting second, grounding me. Her presence was both a comfort and a mirror, reflecting back every fear I had tried to bury. She didn't say anything, didn't question. She just waited, steady, patient, letting me confront my panic. But her calmness only made the pounding in my chest louder. I peered through the peephole again. Coworker, Mark, stood there, smiling that infuriating, knowing grin. He held a folder in one hand, a coffee cup in the other, looking casual and unassuming. But I knew better. He always knew better. And if he suspected even slightly what I had become behind these closed doors, everything I had built, every carefully hidden hour of identity and exploration, could crumble instantly. Alex, Isabella whispered, barely audible. Her voice trembled slightly, not with fear but with the weight of awareness. Do you want me to answer it? I shook my head, breath catching. No. I'll handle it. My voice sounded brittle even to me. I wasn't sure I was capable of handling it. The adrenaline in my veins sharpened every thought, every movement, and yet my limbs felt clumsy, foreign. I took a deep breath, fingers gripping the doorframe for balance, and cracked the door open slightly. Mark's smile widened. Hey, didn't expect to see you at home. Thought I'd drop this off personally. He held out the folder. My stomach twisted. Thanks, I stammered, trying to sound casual, to ground myself in the ordinary. But his gaze flicked past my shoulder for just a second, lingering on the corner of the room. His expression didn't change much, too professional, but the split second felt like a lifetime. I grabbed the folder, closing the door quickly behind me. My hands shook as I placed it on the counter. Isabella didn't speak. She just watched, eyes wide, trying to gauge whether the panic radiating off me was genuine or something else entirely. I exhaled slowly, trying to convince myself I was safe. But the truth slithered around the edges of my mind. Mark had seen something. Or at least sensed something. The room was suddenly too small. Too tight. Every object, every shadow, every whisper of fabric from the dress in the closet screamed at me. You can't hide forever. I glanced at Isabella. Her gaze held a mixture of concern, curiosity, and unspoken support. She reached out, brushing her hand lightly along mine. Alex, she said softly, I need to know, are you afraid to show me everything? I froze. I wanted to say yes, to confess everything. The nights, the dresses, the makeup, the way I had felt more alive behind that reflection than in my normal life. But my voice faltered, caught between fear and desire. Everything. I finally whispered. Yes. Everything, she said, firm but gentle. I couldn't. Not yet. The danger was too real. Mark at the door had shifted everything. My carefully hidden world was cracking at the seams, and if I let Isabella see everything now, if anyone else saw, I couldn't guarantee what would happen next. I shook my head slightly. I can't. Not yet. Her face softened, but the disappointment was there, subtle but unmistakable. She didn't push. She didn't demand. But she understood, and that understanding hit me harder than any accusation ever could. Then the doorbell rang again. I froze. 3 times. Each ring a hammer against my chest. Isabella stepped back slightly, her brow furrowing. Alex, who? I swallowed hard, realizing with a jolt that I didn't have time to think. I didn't have time to rationalize or hide. Every second, every heartbeat, the danger crept closer. I peeked through the peephole again. This time the sight made my stomach drop. Not Mark. Someone else. Someone I hadn't expected. Someone who could see more than anyone. Someone whose presence could change everything in an instant. I couldn't process who it was. My mind refused. The adrenaline made my vision narrow, every sound exaggerated, the tick of the clock, the hum of the fridge, my own ragged breathing. I turned to Isabella, voice tight, barely a whisper. I don't know who it is. Her eyes widened slightly, fear flickering across her features. But she stayed calm. Then, don't open it, she said quietly. I nodded, backing away, but the ringing continued, relentless. I glanced at the mirror across the room, catching the reflection of myself. The woman I had become, the secret I had nurtured, the truth I hadn't dared to fully own until now. The reflection stared back at me, vibrant, alive, challenging and terrifying. And then it hit me, the danger wasn't just outside the door. It was everywhere. It was in me. In the part of me that wanted to embrace this identity fully, unapologetically, without fear or hesitation. It was in me, in the part that was trembling, that wanted to flee, that wanted to hide, that wanted to undo everything I had dared to become. The doorbell rang again. I took a shaky breath, feeling the weight of every secret, every fear, every desire pressing against me. I realized in that moment that nothing would ever be the same. Not my reflection. Not Isabella. Not the carefully ordered world I thought I had built. And then, the sound of a key turning in the lock. I froze. The doorknob rattled. A shadow appeared behind the frosted glass. And I knew without a doubt that the moment of truth had arrived. Whatever happened next would change everything. I glanced at Isabella. Her hand reached for mine, tentative but strong. I gripped it tightly. The door opened. And the story stopped. For now.